I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. I don't know why this is here. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Reade. He is a co-host at Indie News Network, and he was also Tara Reade's former producer for the show Politics of Survival. Reade, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Sabby. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much. For those who have not heard, breaking news, there is huge news here with Tara Reade. I'm not sure if you guys have seen her statement recently, so we're actually going to go ahead and get started with a snippet of her statement live from Russia. So here we go.
While during that time, I was accused when I first came forward of being a Russian asset, of lying, of being discredited. I was accused of all kinds of things, threatened with prison, threatened with my life, my family, my pets. It was very difficult. I kept speaking the truth. I kept pushing forward. I kept pushing forward to Republicans, hopefully that would bring an investigation into Joe Biden. Finally, this year, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both U.S. Congress representatives, said they were going to investigate Joe Biden. But then what happened is, of course, the attacks on me started again and the threats. People started messaging me, asking me if I was suicidal, asking me, making vague threats. And I could see that starting again. And I put out a viral tweet saying, that I am healthy and I am determined to bring Joe Biden to justice, to bring some sort of investigation, and to testify under oath before Congress if asked. During that time, I had the opportunity to come to Moscow, Russia. I've always loved Russia. I do not see Russia as an enemy, nor do many of my fellow American citizens. This illusion that Russia is the enemy is propagated by a few Washington elites who are determined to cause problems. In fact, I'll take you back a minute. In 2019, one of the things that got me in a little bit of trouble was that I said out loud that Joe Biden, if he were to become president, would try to go to war with Russia because of his warmongering in the past and because based on what I had heard when I worked way back as a staffer and then watched as a geopolitical analyst what was happening and the movements that were happening by NATO and by the United States. So that brings me back to the present. I had an opportunity to have my book, which is already published in different languages. I took that opportunity and had meetings and had a vacation and enjoyed Moscow. Apparently, the US government wasn't happy with my choice of vacation spots. So it became clear that going back might be a problem. I don't know the level of which the attacks will continue. I only know that when I got off the plane in Moscow for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe, and I felt heard, and I felt respected. And that has not happened in my own country. I did talk to U.S. Congressman Matt Gaetz. I have not concealed anything. I told him I was in Moscow, Russia, and I told him why. And he said something very stunning. I am considered a whistleblower, as you know, in the United States. One of the cases I will be testifying is about how the DOJ and the FBI has weaponized by the Biden administration against its own citizens. So he said, Tara, you know, I'm worried about your physical safety in the United States. As a US citizen, to hear a US congressman basically say they couldn't protect me in a whistleblower case is stunning. And it makes me angry. And I want to say to my fellow American citizens that as these cases against all of us are coming forward that speak out, I want you to remember the US Congress works for the US citizens. They work for us. We don't work for them.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. Eric, you could put the link to that statement for everyone in the chat so they can watch the full statement. But obviously, to make a long story short, Tara Reade had a visit to Russia and has basically been warned by Congressman Matt Gaetz that it's probably not a good idea to try to return to the United States. Now, Reef, you worked very closely with Tara, obviously, on her show, Politics of Survival. What is your perspective on all of this? I'm actually really worried and concerned for her.
Well, me too. You know, this is a person who's since we started helping Tara, volunteering for her after the RT apocalypse kind of happened, where RT America disbanded. Right, she was freelancing for them at the time, and essentially lost her revenue there. And it's not like she could get a job anywhere else because a cursory Google of her name would bring up lots of history. So, you know, she had difficulty finding other jobs with that. So we decided to pitch her hat in and start doing the Politics of Survival. We've covered countless members on the Ukrainian kill list, as well as the person speaking next to her, Marina Butina there. I think we did a few episodes with her. So, you know, I think she got, you know, I'll read her what she told me last night was that she was here on vacation, and that she was told she may be arrested upon return, and that her physical safety was at risk, right? Which you heard there. Right. I mean, you saw Kit Clarenberg recently detained. Fiorella Isabel, the Convo Couch, was recently detained when they came back to their home countries, right? So I think that's the word on the street. So, but she got a human rights attorney there and pretty much told her to stay. So I think you're seeing a lot of things come out saying she, quote, defected, right? And I had the definition of defecting, Sabby. It's to abandon one country or cause in favor of an opposing one. That's the basic definition. Right? She's not given up her U.S. citizenship. That's something she said specifically. So she's not looking to defect.
Right.
She's asking for citizenship right now because she's afraid she can't come back here.
Right.
So that's the story as I know it so far. So,
and we'll get into that piece here, actually, Kim Iverson, because Kim Iverson actually made a statement about this as well. For those who are not aware, Tara Reade was a producer, one of the producers for the Kim Iverson show. So apparently, like, they were all on vacation at the same time. Kim just got back from vacation. So here was Kim Iverson's response.
We are here one person short. I have to say, I'm not going to bury the lead. We're just going to get right to it. Tara Reade was a producer for this show, the Kim Iverson show, for the last several months, and is no longer a producer with the show. We parted ways shortly before our vacation, all of us taking our separate vacations in different parts of the world. So May 19th, May 18th, May 19th is when we parted ways.
I just want to interject here. When she says they parted ways, does that mean does she imply, Reef, that they had already decided that Tara had already stepped
Yep.
down as producer before they went on vacation?
Yep, pretty much just before. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
All right.
that's what I know.
Let me let her finish here.
Since then, it appears that she decided to take her vacation in Russia, and today came out with a press conference where she says that she is seeking protection and citizenship in Russia. I want to play this clip for you.
I'm going to speak out, and I'm willing to speak under oath about the corruption I witnessed, about the crime I experienced. And it is remarkable that Joe Biden raped me when I worked for him in the U.S. Congress, and I'm supposed to be the fugitive. That is ridiculous, and it's unacceptable, and I don't accept it. So as I move forward, I hope to find safety here. I appreciate my friends in Moscow, Russia, that have opened their arms to me and giving me that safety, including Maria Butina. So thank you. I am going to make a request, and it's a large one. I'd like to apply for citizenship in Russia from the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and hopefully Maria Butina can help me with that from the State Duma. I don't know what will happen with that, but I do promise to be a good citizen, and I promise to move forward with my life in a positive way. And, I hope to also have my American citizenship, because the whole thing is, my Russian brothers and sisters, I just want to thank you for your warmth and for your kindness and for opening your heart to me when at a very scary time. Spasiba.
Okay, before we get back to Kim, so I just want to be clear. Is it because she visited Russia is the reason why she's being told not to come back to the United States, or it's not a good idea for her to return to the US? Would that rule, do you think that rule would apply to anyone, or does that rule just apply to Tara Reade because of
No, I think
her?
I think specifically with they're using Russian sanctions everywhere. This FARA Act you've seen used on people like the Uhuru movement, for instance, right? So that's what they're worried about. They're worried about similar things with that. So,
Okay.
If you're deemed a Russian asset in any way, they can detain you here. So, that's, if you're worried about that, which we might all be in some respects, I wouldn't go traveling around freely. So
Right. Okay, let me finish Kim's statement here.
So we didn't know anything about this. I did not know anything about this. I'm as surprised as everybody else to see this press conference today. I'm speechless. Don't know what's going to happen. She's saying she's seeking citizenship in Russia. She wants to keep her American citizenship. However, she's sitting next to Maria Butina, who she mentions is going to help her potentially get that citizenship. Now, Maria Butina is somebody who was charged in the United States as a foreign agent and was sent back to Russia. She was, the story is a little, I don't know exactly how firm the charges really were against Maria Butina, to be quite honest with you. She was with the NRA. I don't know if you remember this story, is back when.
You said they're not, Reef?
Yeah, they're not. She was essentially set up. She was a member of the NRA and was a member of the Russian equivalent of the NRA. And, they claim she was a honeypot, so on and so forth, and then she spent time in federal prison for that setup, essentially. And she's written a book on essentially how terrible it was in prison, which we all know how that can go. So,
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
There was a lot of, the big Russiagate scandal, and they were trying to go after everybody and anybody in the Trump campaign who may or may not, or conservatives who may or may not have any sort of connection to Russia. And Maria Butina fell into this. She was, she's a Russian national who, as Tara just said, is with the State Duma. I believe that's what she said in there. So there's that. If she is potentially working for the state, I guess that gives a little bit more credence to the charges that were against her here in the United States. She had an organization called Right to Bear Arms, which was a Russian equivalent to the NRA. She was working, talking to people, making connections, doing things, and she ultimately was charged with failing to register as a foreign agent. I'm trying to get the exact language here from the affidavit, but they essentially accused her of cozying up to U.S. persons, U.S. organizations. They say here that she was charged with that she was a Russian asset working for the Russian government, and she was tasked with developing relationships with U.S. persons and infiltrating organizations having influence in the Republican Party and conservative politics, such as the National Rifle Association, the National Prayer Breakfast, and some religious organizations for the purpose of advancing the interests of the Russian Federation. So that's who Maria Butina is, who Tara is sitting next to. So just kind of giving you context of what of that situation. And again, I'm speechless about this. We did part ways prior to this. Did not know about this. I don't know anything more about this, and that's all I really can say about this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all far act stuff.
Yeah, for those just joining, Tara Reade is in Russia. Apparently, she vacationed there, and she has been warned by Matt Gaetz not to return to the United States. It would not be a good idea for her to return to the U.S. at this point in time. She was one of the producers for the Kim Iverson show. Apparently, Tara Reade and with that position, her and Kim had parted ways prior to their vacation. So I'm wondering, Reef, do you think that maybe Tara Reade didn't, tell Kim about this, or that she was vacationing to Russia because she didn't want Kim to be implicated in any way, shape, or form?
Sure. I mean, she's kept us out of the loop on specific things just out of safety as well, So we've been communicating through Telegram, which we know that's not necessarily the most secure platform, but it's close, So, and we're generally mentioning stuff that shouldn't get her in trouble anywhere. Or us,
Right.
like us working with her could theoretically tick these FARA things as well, even though we volunteered specifically and accepted no money for it. So, and that was when she was in the country. So, we talked to, a ex-FBI whistleblower on the show, not that long ago, where he was talking about these FARA requests used to not be enforced. Essentially, they weren't, if they were brought up to the FBI desk, they would be pushed away. Essentially, right? Because it's hard to implicate. Now, apparently, that's not the case. They're coming after everyone with them. So, I mean, you see, that's what's used against all the Uhuru members,
right?
As well as others. So, I think it's a legitimate reason for Tara to not want to come back. I feel it's very similar to the Snowden situation, in my opinion, where he was stuck in a Moscow airport. It wasn't that he defected, it's that they took away his citizenship, right? They haven't done that yet. I'd keep an eye out for that if the Biden administration decides to do something along those lines. But it's definitely used to discredit. I saw countless, people smearing lies and all sorts of stuff yesterday, George Takei and the like.
Yes.
So
yeah, I saw it all on Twitter. I will say I did have the honor of actually meeting her in person. She came to the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I met her actually the night before that at Jimmy Dore did a stand-up show the night before the rally. So I did get a chance to meet her in person. I thought that Tara was, one of the sweetest, most, humble people I think that I've met in this space. But I've also noticed as well that she did not have the level of support that I think that she should have had from people in this space in particular. And that was something that really drove me crazy. For people who
particular
don't really,
ones that started her story here that haven't spoke up about this, a Ryan and a Katie to be specific, but I mean, yeah, I agree with you. This is a person I had to help pay rent for. You know, this is not an easy life to accuse the president of what you've accused him of. So, as
Right.
well as being so truthful on just about everything else.
And it was before
So,
he was president, and she, even before he
mhm.
ran for president for 2020, at least. Joe Biden's run for president like 3 different times. But I mean,
Yes.
this information was out there. And I think that people need to understand is that there were certain times where I felt like Tara Reade was literally on her own. And, you know,
Yep.
kudos to you, Reef, and also to Indy Left, of course, and Colin, all of you guys at Indie News Network, my comrades over at RBN, because I feel like a lot of the guys like really stepped up to show support for Tara Reade. But I've been
Yep.
incredibly disappointed with the lack of support that has come from the women. And that's the thing that really, like, I think it really bothered me, because that is not something that's easy to do. It is not easy to sit up here and to tell your story and to come forward against someone who is in a very powerful position. Joe Biden is very powerful and he's surrounded by powerful people. And to be able to have the courage to come forward and to see not only groups like Time Up are against you, because they
Mhm.
also were attached to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, you know, that can be a really blow to someone, and that can really hurt someone's, you know, feelings. Tara Reade, for a while, like, she's been on this show a couple of times. Tara Reade had trouble getting a job, you guys, because she came forward about Joe Biden. And now it has gotten to the point where Tara Reade doesn't feel safe coming back to this country. So one thing that really stood clear to me is when she said, for the first time, when she stepped off that plane, she felt safe. What does that tell you about what women like Tara Reade, who do come forward against powerful people, what they have to go through in this country?
Yep.
Very, very angered by
Absolutely.
this, very angered, because behind the scenes, and Reef, you know this, behind the scenes, there have been multiple times where there were reach outs. Please let me come on and tell my story. And she
Mhm.
was ignored by a lot of people because they didn't want it to affect their
Well, they
bottom
don't want
line.
the smoke, you know. So, it comes with its own problems generally, you know. There's plenty of bots that will attack her and you, and you'll also be suppressed very heavily just by having her name attached to your group, your show, whatever. You know, they clearly do not want her message out there. So, you know, it's sad. I would like to also iterate that she's not entirely safe, right? You know, you can see with what they're capable of doing to, like, Miss Dugina and others, that they're willing to use any terrorist act necessary to, you know, meet their ends. So, Tara, if you're listening, do stay safe. Make sure you're in places that you can be protected at. But, you know, otherwise, I think it's heartbreaking that it came to this, you know. So, you know, you'll see coming this next election how, if things change in that regard. You know, I feel like if Biden loses and the Democratic Party doesn't necessarily need to protect him, right? You know, you might see some changes there. There are documents where she filed, right? They're hidden away in a college somewhere that no one has seen, right? They know where they are. If they need to be found, they can be found. So, you know, you of course remember the Larry King interview her mother went to and
That's right.
talked on the phone with way back then. You know, I've listened to her story a ton of times. I think it's one of the most credible I've heard.
Yeah,
So,
she's also reached out to people beforehand. For those who are not aware, she mentioned this on the show. She had reached out to people like AOC. She had reached out to Bernie Sanders. Like, they
mhm.
didn't want anything to do with
Elizabeth
it.
Warren. Yep.
Nothing to do with it. All these same people, the same woman, Elizabeth Warren, who stood up and said that, you know, pushed back against Bernie Sanders and basically said that you told me that you didn't think a woman could be president. And she tried to use this misogyny trope against Bernie Sanders. And here was an actual woman who was coming to her to tell her story about Joe Biden, and even Elizabeth Warren wanted nothing to do with it. And so when I say these people are a joke, some people behind the scenes, they'll do whatever they can to protect the Democratic Party, even if that means that they don't want to listen to a survivor story. This is very troubling, and it is a big problem. that we have in this country. She shouldn't have to leave the country. And by the way, she's not alone. There are other people who had to leave the country because they did not feel safe.
Well, and there's also precedent now through the recent Ron Jeremy case where they claimed he was not mentally capable of even remembering if he abused anyone or not. Therefore, that case can be thrown out. And I don't know if you know, but Joe Biden can barely stand up anymore. So, you know, I'm sure that they can get him off that way, as well as many other ways. So it frustrates me that there might not be justice. I hope there is. And, you know, I just hope she's capable of not living in fear for a while. So that would be nice.
Say, you know, shout out to Kim Iverson for giving her a chance, giving her a voice when many others would not. And shout out to you guys like as well. And you're right about the suppression. That was something I noticed a couple of months ago when I was doing like analytics on YouTube. And I saw that like Tara Reade's channel was so suppressed to the point that if you searched for her in YouTube, her channel did not appear. What did appear were news segments from CNN smearing her and yada, yada, all those kinds of things. It was very hard to find her. They buried her significantly in the algorithm. And you saw the difference, obviously, when she went over to Rumble as well. Like you saw the difference.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, and INN in turn too gets suppressed because of it, right? So, you know, to me, it's, I mean, you can find her if you look up tarreadpodcast.com. All her links are there. You can also find them at indienews.network. All of her links are linked there as well as the networks. But, you know, I think for, you know, she'll put out a tweet. She's got loads of followers and they get nothing, you know. So, you know, I asked if there was any ways to support her. She said pretty much just follow her if you can. Right. Make sure to share her tweets and things like that. Those are always helpful.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you know, just send your support. She needs some positive love at the minute. So.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a warning sign. The next story, after Reef leaves, the next story I'm going to get into just brings up this issue again, but with, you know, different person, a little bit of different situation. But this idea that like as a journalist, it's like you're not even free to really try. Commentator, it seems like you're not really free to travel to certain countries now and then come back to the United States. We saw Fiorella also had to deal with this issue where she was detained because she works in Russia. She works for RT. And it's just, this is how bad it has become, you guys. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I wish her the best. I think there's an interview that she did recently with Megyn Kelly, or at least Megyn Kelly did announce there's an interview coming. Okay. Yeah. So definitely check that out if you guys, you know, get the chance to do so, because like I think she needs all the support in the world right now. And I have to say this again, and I'm sorry, I really don't care, but I have been greatly disappointed. And I've held my tongue for a long time. I've been greatly disappointed at the people in this space, more so the women in this space that did her wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Reef, before you go, where can people find you?
At Reef Breland on Twitter. Otherwise, very easy. Go to indienews.network. You can find all the links to all the members there. Super simple, you know. But otherwise, you know, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, Rockfin, so you can find us there too. So
that's right. And Colin and Indy left in the chat. Colin says it's a sad state of affairs that 2 Republicans are willing to support her when the party that she worked for did not. I miss my sister. Thank you so much for that, Colin. And Indy left said the Biden administration successfully blocked her from testifying at the UN.
At the UN.
At the UN, and is actively trying to stop her testifying in Congress.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys.
Igor Lopatnik was trying to get her to testify as far as I think it was Igor. It might have been Piotr, the actual UN rep. So we've had both of them on the show. So
that's your vote blue, no matter who candidate, guys. That's your lesser of 2 evils. Boy, I tell you. All right, Reef, thanks so much for coming on. And
appreciate you.
Peace.
Bye.
All right, guys. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, please send some love over to Tara Tara Reade's way, because she's not been getting good reception. And I think that even if you go to that video that Eric put the link to the full announcement in the chat, the comments are just it's terrible. The comments on the video are really cruel. So definitely give Tara Reade your support. All right, we're going to shout out a couple of chats. We'll go to patrons, and then we'll show the thumbnail, and I'll tell you about the other stories we're going to discuss tonight. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Do the damn thing. That helps me with the algorithm. Thank you so much. Shout out to Jim Van Brommer for becoming a Sabby member. And shout out to Ethel Bonham for becoming a Sabby member. Give him a big whoop whoop in the house. Thank you for the super sticker, Oz. Thank you for the super sticker, Becca Sia. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Reefer, what's up, baby? Thank you, Marvin. Sabby have John Mark Dugan, Palm Beach Sheriff. Had info on Epstein case from deceased lead detective Joe Recarey. John lives in Russia. Interesting. I can look him up. And thank you for the super chat, Paul. Sabby is cool. Love Ireland. Welcome. International peeps in the house. All right, let's give a quick shout out to Sabby patrons. And then we'll show that beautiful thumbnail. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Sabby patrons. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, don't forget about those Sabbies, and of course, members. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate your support. You can see all of their names here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Give you a big thank you in the house. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. All right, guys. What else are we going to discuss tonight? I have a couple more stories to go into. Tonight is an interesting night in reference to news. I got to tell you that much. So let's share that beautiful thumbnail and let's hop into it. Tonight, we are also discussing Jeffrey Epstein and Chris Rock. Yikes. More people are being revealed. I'm going to get into that story. We're also going to discuss RFK Jr. is questioned by Pasta from the Convo Couch. We'll talk about RFK Jr.'s speech in New Hampshire that happened this morning. Of course, we just discussed Tara Reade exits the U.S. with Reef, who was her former producer. And we're also going to discuss Grayzone. Kit Clarenberg is detained. We'll get into that, and we'll also dive into some of the ballot initiative wins for the state of Ohio. But first, speaking of people being detained and issues with Russia, we're going to jump into this story about Kit Clarenberg. He is a journalist at the Grayzone. If you're not familiar with him, just FYI, he is based in the UK. So I think most of you are familiar with the Grayzone members, Max, Aaron, and Anya. But there's also Kit, but he's just not in the US. He's in the UK. And apparently, Kit did not have a good week. Now, first, it started out with this tweet here that I saw from Anya, where she said, when Kit Clarenberg landed in the UK, his home country, anti-terror authorities were already waiting outside of his plane. They questioned him about his journalism and political views for hours and seized his belongings. So again, this is, you know, similar to what we were saying with the issue with Tara Reade. Like, she went to Russia and she's been advised not to return back to the United States. Kit's not even trying to come to the United States. Like, he was just trying to return home to the UK, and he has run into issues as well. So the Grayzone actually released an article about this. So let's go ahead and get into that. So here we go. British police detain journalist Kit Clarenberg and interrogate him about the Grayzone. So this was written by Max Blumenthal. Very recent. I jumped on this one. British counter-terror police detained journalist Kit Clarenberg upon his arrival at London's Luton Airport and subjected him to extended interrogation about his political views and reporting for the Grayzone. So this is the piece. I'm gonna make it a little bigger for you guys. This piece where they mention his political views, I think that's one of the ones that's even more troubling, because what do his political views have to do with anything? You know, you're supposed to live in a free country, but now they're questioning your political views. Let's go on. As soon as journalist Kit Clarenberg landed in his home country of Britain on May 17th, 6 anonymous plainclothes counter-terror officers detained him. Now, I want to ask you a question here in reference to this. Imagine if you just got off the plane, a couple of guys come up to you and they say, we're going to arrest you, whatever they said to him, but they're wearing plain clothes. Now, what happens if you try to break away from them? You're like, who the hell are you? Like, I don't see a uniform. I don't see a badge. Why were they in plain clothes? Let's go on. They quickly escorted him to a back room where they grilled him for over 5 hours about his reporting for this outlet, for the Grayzone. They also inquired about his personal opinion on everything from the current British political leadership to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And this is the key piece here. This is the jackpot, ladies and gentlemen. This is what a lot of it is coming down to. Some of the reporting that has come from the Grayzone in reference to this war with Russia and Ukraine. Now, Kit Clarenberg obviously isn't the only journalist at the Grayzone. The UK also seems to be cracking down on censorship, not just the United States. And I think people need to be very concerned about this. Let's go on. At one point, Clarenberg's interrogators demanded to know whether the Grayzone had a special arrangement with Russia's Federal Security Bureau to publish material. So I try to be careful with this word with YouTube. But now they're trying to find a way to link him with Russia's Security Bureau because of the work that they've done at the Grayzone. This is crazy. During Clarenberg's detention, police seized the journalist's electronic devices and SD cards. They fingerprinted him, took DNA swabs, and photographed him intensively. They threatened to arrest him if he did not comply. Now, I'm not sure about the laws in the UK, but at any point, was Kit allowed to say, I'm not going to answer any questions until I speak to my lawyer? Was he given the opportunity to make the one phone call to call an attorney or friend? Anyone? And what did they do with those DNA swabs that they took of him? How do we know that information wasn't given to other sources? Going back in, Clarenberg's interrogation appears to be London's way of retaliating for the journalist's blockbuster reports exposing major British and U.S. intelligence intrigues. In the past year alone, Clarenberg revealed how a cabal of Tory national security hardliners violated the Official Secrets Act to exploit Brexit and install Boris Johnson as prime minister. Oh, what do you know? We're not the only country where they select the politicians. In October 2022, he earned international headlines with his expose of British plans to bomb the Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian Federation. Then came his report on the CIA's recruitment of the two September 11 hijackers this April, a viral sensation that generated massive social media attention. This is the kicker right here as well. You have to be very careful reporting on that particular subject. Now, that's a tough one. And I do remember that release from the Grayzone. I didn't cover it on here because I was like, YouTube is probably going to pull it. Like, just to be honest with you. But that one, September 11 and also this war with Russia and Ukraine, those two issues, depending on how you discuss it, if it goes against the State Department talking points, they will consider you to be an issue, a problem. Among Clarenberg's most consequential exposés was his June 2022 report unmasking British journalist Paul Mason as a UK security state collaborator hell-bent on destroying the Grayzone and other media outlets, academics, and activists critical of NATO's role in Ukraine. Because Clarenberg's reporting on Mason relied heavily on leaked emails, Mason falsely accused him of assisting a Russian state-backed hack and leak disinformation campaign. Mason has also reported the leak of his emails to the British police. So they have been watching Kit for quite some time. They have had their eye on him for a while. Emma Bryant, a self-styled disinformation expert who participated in Mason's campaign to sabotage NATO critics, dispatched lawyers to demand Clarenberg remove all of his articles that mention her from the internet. The lawyer letters also threatened costly super injunctions to prevent further reporting and challenged the authenticity of the email's content. The cease and desist letters additionally leveled false and defamatory allegations against Clarenberg, including that he was personally involved in her email and her Twitter account. And here's the tweet from Kit here. This is absolutely outrageous censorship of my friends and colleagues, in particular sinister, given I and the Grayzone News received formal cease and desist orders from @Shoesmith last week, acting on behalf of Emma Bryant. And here's that letter. Immediate action required. Dear Mr. Clarenberg, our client, Dr. Emma Bryant. Boop, and leak threat. We have been appointed to act by Dr. Bryant, as you are aware. Guardian journalist vocal in his support for Ukraine had information. Proton email account insuspected by individuals believed to be engaged by Russian state authorities. This has been reported to various, I think if I click there to show me, I think it cuts it off a little bit there. Did you cut it off a little bit there? Yeah, various authorities and criminal investigations are ongoing. So I think I do remember seeing that actually. And then Max Blumenthal tweeted, YouTube has censored my and Aaron Mate's factual discussion of Paul Mason secret collusion. It has done so on the basis of harassment and bullying. We assume pressure came from the same elements seeking to ruin us. I remember when this was reported as well. Did the bogus and obviously malicious complaints by Paul or Emma prompt the UK police to detain and investigate Clarenberg? Clarenberg's reports contain neither falsehoods nor anything approaching disinformation, which is precisely why intelligence-linked figures like Mason are so frustrated by their existence. Despite Mason and Bryant's allegations, there is not even hard evidence that Russian were the source of the leaks. While reporting on leaked material, Clarenberg engaged in the same journalistic practice that the West's most prominent legacy newspapers, from the New York Times to the Washington Post, depend on to break news themselves. In fact, Thomas Reade, a self-styled disinformation expert and professor of strategic studies at Johns Hopkins University, has stated that journalists should not shy away from covering the leaks first reported by Clarenberg. So let's talk about that for just a second. You can follow all of the steps and all of the rules as the approved State Department mouthpieces do in the US. But if you are an independent outlet, and let's say you have a different perspective or you highlight a different side of the story that the West media has been instructed to avoid or to not discuss in a certain way, you will be considered a target, and they will try to find a way to take you down. And when I say they, that's anybody from mainstream media trying to discredit independent media. Yes, that happens as well. That's the alphabet letter agencies that come after independent media as well. That includes politicians who also speak out against these things. AOC has been doing so in a particularly mild way, but I know what she's saying underneath, the heat of it all. So this is where the problem comes in. If Kit Clarenberg and the rest of the members at the Grayzone, if they had the same talking points as Mehdi Hassan, or if they had the same talking points as Morning Joe, they wouldn't be a target. Kit Clarenberg probably would have never been detained in the first place. The problem is their talking points, they are telling you the information that mainstream media is leaving out. And by the way, they're leaving it out on purpose. And that's where the problem comes in. And it's not just them. It's other independent media outlets have gone through this as well. Let's go on. It therefore appears that British authorities did not detain Clarenberg for any legal breaches, but because he reported factual stories that exposed the national security state's own violations of both domestic and international law, as well as the malign plots of it, media lackeys. And here is a copy of the detainee. Listen to this. Notice of detention under Schedule 3 for the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act 2019 to Kit Clarenberg. This writing is very small. I'm not going to read all of this. But it gives him a list of duties. Basically says here that he has been detained under paragraph 4 of Schedule 3 of Counterterrorism and Border Security Act of 2018. And it gives him duties here. While he is examined, he must answer questions to put to you by the examining officer, give the examining officer information in your possession. This is the scary part, including the pins and passcodes of any electronic devices in your possession. Give the examining officer on request either a valid passport or photograph, etc. Declare whether you have with you documents of a kind specified by the examining officer. Give the officer on request any, oh, did I say that one already? Oh, yeah. Any document which you have with you. That's right. Cooperate with any search of your person and property and not willfully obstruct or seek to frustrate the taking of photographs, fingerprints, etc. So that's the information that he had there. Interrogated under counterterror provisions, grilled about non-existent Russian ties. Journalist Karen, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how to scoop your name, Kit. Journalist Kit Clarenberg arrived in the UK on May 17th from Belgrade, Serbia, where he lives. He was planning to visit friends and family, but first he would have to pass through an obstacle course British police laid before him. As soon as his flight landed at Luton Airport, the pilot announced that border police were just around the corner and asked by all passengers to prepare their passports. The police were waiting for Clarenberg at the bottom of the stairs, leading passengers from the plane to the tarmac. They immediately led him into the back room and informed him of his detention under Schedule 3, Section 4 of the 2019 Counterterrorism and Border Act. There were 6 officers in plain clothes. I don't like the plain clothes off. Let me say something about this really quick. I was thinking about, remember the video that we talked about of the guy that was killed by the police? He was beaten up by the police so badly that it killed him. The officers that pulled him over were wearing plain clothes. So to him, it's just like, who the hell are these guys? You know, you may feel like you're being carjacked. You don't know what's going on. I never liked that idea of the plainclothes officers. But imagine 6 officers come up to you. You don't know they're officers. They're not wearing a uniform and just start to pull you away. How would you react? What would you do? All because of your journalism? It goes on to say they refused to tell him their names and offered call signs in head. And that's another thing that I think should change. Even if you are going to move forward with plainclothes officers, I do think they should be forced to give you some type of information to let you know who they really are. This is just ridiculous. So Kit goes on to say, I'd been expecting something like this since a police interview request arrived last summer. Kit told the Grayzone, referring to a communique he received from a senior British detective July 27th, 2022. The email requested Clarenberg report to a station to be questioned about allegations by an unnamed compliant of offenses under the Computer Misuse Act. And then you can see a copy of this email here. He was notified in September 2022 that the police investigation had been closed. However, looks like he got more information here saying that it was closed. But then it goes on to say, I have been requested not to disclose the details of the complainant in this matter. However, I can disclose that there was insufficient evidence to proceed, which is why they had to close it. Boy, this is a doozy, I tell you. That's right, the Oracle. Very well said. Plainclothes police is like the execution of a no-knock warrant. Exactly. Exactly. That's how I look at it. Back in the interrogation room at Luton, Clarenberg was asked which passports he held in his possession. They seemed surprised that I only had a British passport with me. The police then grilled him about whether he owned foreign property, which countries he had visited, and why. See what I was saying about the countries that you visit? See, this is something that they're looking at now, right? So everybody start paying attention. Go to Russia if you want to. May not be a good time right now. May not be able to come back. He was compelled to provide his address in Belgrade, disclose how much he paid for rent. Why is that any other information? Why do they need to know how much he paid for rent? And bizarrely, whether his energy costs were included. Let me say something about this piece right here. Remember what I told you about the energy issue? During the winter, some of the residents in the UK couldn't afford to pay for heat because if you're dependent on that pipeline and the pipeline, you know, they blew up the pipeline, then you're kind of screwed, right? So they actually created facilities in the UK called warm banks that people could go to get heat if they couldn't afford to pay for heat anymore in their home. So they're throwing this out there, whether or not his energy costs were included. That's just a way for them to try to point to him and say, oh, he is a Russian asset. They think they're slick. The officers then demanded to know why Clarenberg lived in Serbia. From there, police interrogators homed in on Kit's work with the Grayzone. They asked which publications I wrote for, and I told them I write for many. One even remarked they'd never previously heard of Mint Press Zone. Their overwhelming, if not exclusive, interest was in the Grayzone. See? The officers asked about articles, including his report about the CIA's recruitment of the would-be September 11 hijackers, as well as his thoughts on the September 11 conspiracy theories. See? The Grayzone has become a target. If it isn't this issue of people being detained, it's journalists from the Grayzone being put on that Ukraine kill list that we've talked about before. If it isn't that, it's them being uninvited from certain conferences that they were originally invited to. And then when people are like, oh, I don't like their journalism in reference to the war in Ukraine, so let's uninvite them. They have now been seen as a target. And they're not alone. Then came a blizzard of questions relating to the Grayzone. How much was Kit paid by this publication? How often? And into which bank account? So again, why is that any of their business? This is where I don't know if the legal process in the UK is the same, but this is where I feel he should have been allowed to say, I'm not going to answer any other questions without an attorney present. But it seems like he wasn't given that opportunity, or he wasn't allowed to do that. That's what it seems like. Because why do they need to know how much he's being paid and how often he's being paid and the bank account? They wanted to know who owned the site, how much contact did he have with Max Blumenthal, the author of this article and editor of the Grayzone. Had he met Max Blumenthal in person? A lot of people have met Max Blumenthal in person. You going to round up everybody? Like, come on. How many rallies has Max been at? How many speeches has Max given? You know how many people have interacted with Max Blumenthal in some way, shape, or form? Are you going to round up all of those people? The counterterror officers have rattled off a series of unfounded questions related to Russia. Does the Grayzone have an agreement of any kind with Russia's Federal Security Bureau to publish hacked material? Whoops, I said it anyway. Damn it. Oh, well. Has Kit knowingly been in contact with any FSB operatives? Is he in touch with the current or former personnel of Russian state media? That would include RT, just FY. And who owns the Grayzone, and is it sponsored by Russia? You see, they've been doing this thing now where everybody is supposedly a Russian asset. Like if you have a different view, different narrative, or if you're not repeating State Department talking points, you're automatically considered to be a Russian asset. If you speak out against the war in Ukraine, you're automatically considered to be a Putin puppet. Like, it's just ridiculous how bad this has become. Poor kid. It goes on to say at this point, the officers took Kit's bank cards out of the room for an extended period. They also seized his camera memory cards and SIMs, demanding he provide PIN codes to open them. What was done with my bank cards, I do not know. The same for the SDs. What they got off these old and barely used cards was unclear. You can read the rest of the article at the Grayzone. Yikes. But this is what I was trying to warn people about. This is what is happening. This is the scary part about the censorship. If they can't find a way to silence you, then they'll try to find a way to detain you. So they detained Kit, and obviously they didn't find anything to be able to hold him there, right? But they'll continue to do this, continue to do it to scare you enough and to put as much fear into you so that you won't continue doing what you're doing. So you will stop writing, or you'll start writing the way that they want you to write, or you'll report the stories, the ones they want you to report. You'll have the talking points that they want you to have and not your own. And that's what we've come to. So no, it's not just happening in the US, it's also happening abroad. So if you didn't know about Kit, you know who Kit is now. Like I said, usually most people know about Max, Aaron, and Anya, but now you know who Kit Clarenberg is, and his picture's on the thumbnail. So what a mess. What a freaking mess. Aye. I'm going to go to some of the comments. But this is the scary part, you guys. Thank you for the super, Robert. Excellent live chat, Sabby. Any chance to have Whitney Webb as a guest? I would love to have Whitney Webb as a guest. I have no idea how to reach her. That is the problem. I couldn't find any contact information for her. I'm pretty sure that's not public for good reasons. But if you know how to connect with Whitney, let me know. Love to have her on. Thank you for the super chat, Seth. Do you know where Epstein is buried? Does anyone? Dun, dun, dun. No, I don't. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. They want to know your source for funding so they can cut it like Canada did the truckers. That's a good point. Thank you, Steve. Sabby, can we watch the video of Biden falling down just for laughs? That video is coming up tonight. It's coming up. It's connected to another story, but it's coming up. And Joe, I have the utmost respect for Max Blumenthal. When the press called Occupy Wall Street a bunch of out-of-touch hippies, Max Blumenthal did some incredible journalism and never once was what's deceptive. Thank you for that. Yeah. Everybody's always out of touch or hippie-ish when you're trying to fight back against the establishment, right? You're out of touch, you're a hippie, or you're a troublemaker, so to speak. That's my favorite one, the troublemakers. All right. Eric, how are we looking on Rumble? Just let me know if it's still going over there. I'm still nervous about it because I can't see it on my end. Okay. We're moving on to our next story. Looks like we're making good time. We have more news about Jeffrey Epstein and his connections. Now, the Daily Mail ran with this story. I say take it with a grain of salt. More outlets do need to report about it, but we're going to say allegedly. Here's some information that you need to know. We already talked about the fact that he had a connection with Bill Gates. We talked about his connection with RFK Jr. We've talked about his connection with JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon. We've talked about his connection with Google co-founders, Sergey and Larry Page. And we also told you that Larry Page seems to be missing. They cannot find this guy, and they are trying to find him because they need to issue a subpoena to him. Now we're going to talk about a couple other people. Oh, and we talked about his connection to Noam Chomsky. Now there's more people because there's been more files that have been released. So shout out to the Daily Mail for reporting this. So exclusive, the Jeffrey Epstein files, trove of never before seen emails and calendars give unprecedented insight into his network of power and influence that includes Chris Rock, Peter Thiel, and Richard Branson. I think all of you know who Chris Rock is. Richard Branson owns Virgin Records. He's another rich dude. Peter Thiel is also another rich dude. He owns multiple things. I believe he also owns Rumble. Oh, shit. That just hit me. I'm sorry. That just hit me. Yeah. I think Peter Thiel does own Rumble. Let's get into this. Yikes. Okie doke. A vast trove of Epstein's private calendars and emails are being revealed today by dailymail.com. The hundreds of pages in the files give an unprecedented insight into the late pedophile's extraordinary network of power and influence. Among the revelations is that Epstein appeared to know personal details about his marriage with Bill Gates and ex-wife Melinda, while magician David Blaine had numerous dinners with the financier. Maybe David Blaine met with him to teach him how to disappear. Bad joke? Too soon? Presidents, prime ministers, royalty, famous names previously not linked to Epstein are also featured in the hundreds of pages of documents. They show that Epstein courted the world's elite even after serving 13 months in jail for having sex with underage girls and being labeled a registered sex offender, as he sought to rehabilitate his image. Dozens of powerful people were scheduled to meet him, including Irina Shayk, I don't know who that is, Chris Rock, Wendy Murdoch, and Richard Branson. Tech billionaire Peter Thiel, early Facebook investor Sean Parker, artist Jeff Koons, JP Morgan chief executive Jamie Dimon, and music industry executive Tommy Mottola, who used to be married to Mariah Carey, are also among those who appear in the documents. Tommy Mottola owns Sony, by the way, for those who are not aware. The files were handed over by Epstein's estate to the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he owned 2 private islands during its investigation into his sex trafficking operation. He hanged himself in prison in 2019 while waiting trial. Just like Epstein's notorious Black Book of Contacts, the schedule contained personal numbers and email addresses that allowed him to access his associates whenever he wanted. The Daily Mail takes you through the records in depth, broken down by each figure involved. Brace yourselves, honey buns. Here we go. Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. Prince Andrew has admitted to being friends with Epstein for more than a decade. He flew in his private plane numerous times, stayed at his properties, and even visited Epstein's islands in the Caribbean, witnesses have claimed. Epstein victim Virginia Roberts claims she was forced to have sex with the Duke when she was 17, claims he denied. But last year, Andrew settled a civil lawsuit brought by Roberts for a reported $12 million. And by the way, the royal family acts like this isn't even an issue in reference to Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew is still seen publicly. They act like nothing happened. The Epstein files show that, I'm trying to be careful with this word because YouTube too. The Epstein files show that he used Andrew's name while trying to persuade JP Morgan to let him act as an intermediary for wealthy clients. It's so much information here. Then there's the Bill Gates issue. We talked about this where Epstein was actually trying to persuade the bank to work with Bill Gates on a $100 million fund for elite donors, and a crunch meeting was taking place August 31st, 2011. In an email to JP Morgan boss Jess Staley and senior banker Mary Erdurez, whatever, Epstein said that investors were wary of the bank because it was a quasi-US government arm. Epstein wrote, I am also aware JP Morgan has a colorful array of clients, so a client relationship is much less problematic than an institutional joint venture. Among the wealthy men Epstein reeled off was Prince Andrew. Epstein said he is not allowed to make money. The timing of the email is revealing and suggests Epstein knew intimate details about Andrew's finances, which were tied up with those of his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, with whom he stayed close after his 1996 divorce. In May 2010, Ferguson was caught in a newspaper sting asking for $550,000 for access to Andrew. So that's more about the Prince Andrew. I don't want to read too much about that because we have talked about that part before. And there he is. And that's Sarah Ferguson. And I just want to go on here a little bit. I think I'm cutting part of this document off. No, here we go. David Blaine and Chris Rock. David Blaine, only previously known connection to Epstein, was appearing in his Black Book of Contacts, but the two men appear to have had a friendship, the records suggest. In June 2013, Epstein had a dinner with the futurist Pablos Holman and a Jessica Joff, which appeared to be the actress of the same name. That's interesting. The schedule says David Blaine will stop by toward the end of dinner. Reached by phone, Holman said he thought he was in San Francisco at the time of the dinner, but said, I don't know exactly. He said that he knew Blaine and called Epstein the most toxic thing in the whole world. It's interesting how many people want to call Jeffrey Epstein out after he has passed away. But if they had those feelings about Jeffrey Epstein during that time when he was alive, that didn't stop them from enjoying his company. If they felt that Jeffrey Epstein was so horrible, creepy, corrupt, that didn't stop them from hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. So just keep that in mind. I question all these people. Holman said, even if there was a dinner, I probably wouldn't want to say anything about it. This right there should let you know. Even if there was a dinner, I probably wouldn't want to say anything about it. Why is that? What was said during that dinner? And there's a picture of David Blaine there, the magician. I'm not sure if you guys, everyone knows David Blaine, but he was known for like doing street magic. That's really what made him more popular. He used to just go up to random people and do magic on the street. I always thought David Blaine looked kind of creepy, just keeping it real. Maybe I was right. Joff did not return calls for comment and nor did her representatives. Let's go on here. I don't know why they felt the need to mention that his birthday is, birthday April 4th. Chris Rock. Okay. In September 2013, Blaine attended another dinner at Epstein's house with Woody Allen, Jeff Koons, and his wife, Justine, the records show. Now, let's remember, Noam Chomsky also attended dinner with Woody Allen and his wife. So just keep this in mind. In January 2014, Epstein planned another dinner with friends, including a girlfriend, a young Eastern European called Karnya Shuliak, Woody Allen, and Jess Staley. Blaine was also listed among those attending, and the scheduled event says Sarah and Brian would stop by. Sarah being Sarah Kellen, one of Epstein's top recruiters. The calendar also said that maybe Chris Rock would be coming. The first time that the comedian has been linked to Epstein. In 2002, Epstein did invite another comedian, Chris Tucker, on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton aboard Epstein's private jet. Let's think about something. Let's put all these people together. Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire. Obviously, billionaires are going to have some type of contact with politicians, right? Some of them donate to their campaigns. So you could see the connection with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton. The connection that I have not understood is the connection to Jeffrey Epstein and Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker, comedian, also actor, but it is not like Chris Tucker is like $20 million movie actor Chris Tucker. He's famous, but Chris Tucker is not like, I don't know. Give me an example. Chris Tucker is not like, trying to think of someone really, he's not like Will Smith famous, right? So it just seemed kind of weird to me that he would have had a connection to Chris Tucker of all. It just seemed kind of, I don't know, especially since Chris Tucker's popularity started to dwindle down after he had stopped the Rush Hour movies. After a while, his popularity started to dwindle down and you didn't see him do as much in reference to acting. So that one was odd. And then also inviting Chris Rock. Chris Rock, in reference to comedians, Chris Rock can sell out a stadium, I think, faster than Chris Tucker could. So I could kind of see why he would reach out to Chris Rock. But Chris Tucker, to me, that one just seemed kind of, I don't know. That one, it doesn't sit well with me for some reason. A source close to Rock said that he did not attend the dinner. The source admitted that Rock was friendly with Woody Allen, the comedian who previously said he has watched the director's movie Annie Hall more than 80 times, but that Epstein may have confused him with Tucker because apparently Epstein thinks we all look alike. Chris Tucker and Chris Rock do not look alike. I don't know how you mix up those two. Chris Tucker's voice is very different. He has a distinct voice, right? Chris Tucker, Friday, the movie Friday, the movie's Rush Hour. Chris Rock was in New Jack City. Like, they're not even the same. I don't know how this happens. I don't know how this happens. Oh, dear. Oh, my God. On April 4th, 2014, Epstein's calendar says, reminder, David Blaine's birthday is April 4th. The following day states, to be determined with David Blaine. David Blaine did not respond to Daily Mail for requests for comment. Of course he didn't. But we got to think about this, guys. We got to think about this, okay? I want you to tell me the Chris Tucker part. I know some of you like, is she mentioning this again? Yes, it bothers me. It bothers me. It's just, I don't know. That one's weird to me. But Chris Rock was on the list to be invited. All these people are connected, guys. Like, this is some scary. Again, it doesn't mean that Chris Rock did anything. Doesn't mean that David Blaine did anything. But what it does mean is that they were all connected to Jeffrey Epstein. And we have to start wondering how many people went on that jet, the Lolita Express. How many people went to that island? We still don't know. Still don't know. We talked about Bill Gates, so I'm not going to get into that again. We talked about him a couple of times on here in reference to this relationship. But I also want to mention, we talked about JP Morgan, so we're not going to go through that again. We talked about Woody Allen. This is crazy. But the part I want to mention is Jess Staley. Jess Staley was the chief executive of JP Morgan's exclusive private bank, which had Epstein as a client, and then the bank's chief executive until he left in 2013. He became the head of British bank Barclays in 2015, and he was forced out in 2021 over his links to Epstein. So you see, they got rid of him when they found that out. The logs show that Staley met Epstein at least 31 times from 2010 to 2015, many of which were after work hours from 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. In April 2011, they had dinner with Larry Summers. Hope you guys know him. The former Treasury Secretary. And in January 2014, Staley was part of a group having a meal at an Italian restaurant with Epstein that also included Woody Allen. In April 2013, Staley went to a dinner with former Israeli Prime Minister, I think we mentioned this before, Ehud Barak, and others at Epstein's house. In March 2015, 7 months before he was appointed to lead Barclays, Staley emailed Epstein from the island of St. Bart's in the Caribbean. He said that his daughter wanted to speak to Epstein about her future. Would you trust your kid around Jeffrey Epstein? Let's go on. Staley wrote, Columbia University confirmed they want her to get her degree July 1st. So please save the date. You need to be there. That's him right there. So his face is circled. Jeff Staley standing with Jeffrey Epstein. The picture was taken after Epstein was convicted of soliciting prostitution from underage girls in 2008. So this is the piece you really need to hold on to. When he went to meet with him, again, this was after he was already convicted. After he was convicted. Hold on to that, guys. This is what kills me. The people, not even necessarily the people who met with him beforehand, who were not involved with any of the activity, but maybe had met him for dinner or business discussions, but the people who chose to meet with him after he was convicted, those are the people I am giving a side eye to. You need to look at them very closely. Let's go on. The logs show that Staley met with Epstein at least 31 times from 2010 to 2015. And these are the logs here. Around the same time, Epstein's assistant sent him a reminder, Jess Staley would like to have dinner with you and his family. But the most disturbing calendar entries feature mention of Epstein making sure that wine was available for Staley during his visits in what appears to be a possible code word for something else. I bet it was. On May 29th, 2012, Epstein scheduler Leslie Groff said that Staley was coming at 6:30 p.m. and wrote, reminder to have a bottle of wine for Jess chilled and ready to go. She added that one of Epstein's housekeepers had to confirm back RE this. January 7th, 2014, Susan Hamlin, another of Epstein's assistants, emailed him with the subject snacks for today. She wrote, do you have any specific requests for appointments with Rothschild, which Jess may be joining? We will have Jess wine on hand. So if I'm using my imagination, These phrases, snacks for today, wine on hand, maybe that refer to women. Maybe that refer to some of those underage girls. Allegedly. I have to be careful how I say it on here, but allegedly, that's if I'm just using my imagination. Now, on September 9th, 2014, the diary noted a 7:30 p.m. appointment with Staley. It read, have Jess white wine available. November 20th, it says, Jess Staley, make sure we have white wine. Notice how it went from here, it's white wine, and before, wine on hand, and this time, white wine. References to wine have featured, let me get this off of here. References to wine have featured in other emails between the two men, which have been released in a court case involving JP Morgan and the U.S. Virgin Islands government. On November 1st, 2009, while Epstein was still in prison for having sex with underage girls, Staley emailed him while staying on his Caribbean island. He wrote, so when all hell breaks loose and the world is crumbling, I will come here and be at peace. Say what now? I hear you, Robert. Robert says it is code. When all hell breaks loose and the world is crumbling, I will come here and be at peace. Presently, I'm in the hot tub with a glass of white wine. This is an amazing place. Truly amazing. Next time we're here together, I owe you much, and I deeply appreciate our friendship. I have few so profound. Kill Your Corgi said this is Illuminati. Oh boy. And December 4th, 2009, Staley told Epstein via email, I realized the danger in sending this email, but it was great to be able today to give you in New York City a long, heartfelt hug. The next day, Epstein wrote to Staley, you were with Larry, and I had to put up with ... and attached a picture of a young woman, which is redacted in the court document. Staley responded, don't tell me, a French wine. Epstein replied, always thoughts of alcohol. Wow, guys. In other previously released, Epstein and Staley talked about Disney princesses, including one message sent in July 2010. Staley told Epstein, maybe they're tracking you. That was fun. Say hi to Snow White. Epstein responded, what character would you like next? When Staley said Beauty and the Beast, Epstein replied, well, one side is available. Moving on to Richard Branson. I'm not going to get through all of this because this is a long article. Richard Branson, let me go to him. There's Shalane. This is Richard Branson. So he owns Virgin Records, for those who are not aware. He's always told this story over and over again. I was a teenager. I dropped out of school. I started selling records out the backseat of my car and trunk of my car, and I became rich, so you can too. That's what people know about Richard Branson. But apparently, listen to this. It says, the note says that Richard Branson may join the dinner. A source close to the Virgin founder was in the UK that night, where he hosted the stars of the event for his company, followed by a party for his train company, Virgin Trains. A spokeswoman for Branson was not able to comment on whether he ever met Epstein. So again, that's him there. And the picture says, on September 20th, 2013, Epstein scheduled lists a to-be-determined dinner with Bill Gates, Thorbjørn Jagland, the former Norwegian politician, and Norwegian diplomat Larsen. The note says that Richard Branson may join the dinner. So he also have connections with him. But again, I would expect him to have connections with another, rich guy. Peter Thiel, tech billionaire and early Facebook investor Peter Thiel had several meetings with Epstein, the calendar show. During one stretch in 2014, Thiel appears to have met Epstein 3 times in quick succession at a time when he was on the board of Facebook and in charge of venture capital firm Founders Fund. He was also the chairman of analytics company Palantir, which works closely with the Department of Defense. The logs show that in September 2014, Epstein's schedule listed Thiel under people to see. The 2 men met for dinner at Epstein's New York mansion on the 12th with Woody Allen present, the schedule says. The following day, Epstein met Thiel on his own from 2 to 4 p.m., after which Bill Burns, the current director of the CIA, who was deputy secretary of the state at the time, joined them for an hour. He was hanging with all kinds of people. Even people that are part of these government agencies. The day after that, Epstein planned a lunch and said that maybe Peter Thiel would come. The 2 men were scheduled for lunch the following week, and the entry list Thiel's personal assistant and their number. Thiel did not respond to dailymail.com requests for comment. Of course he didn't. I know that was a lot of information, but you need to know about it. I feel like more names are being released every week, so stay tuned. But this is crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. JB says this is deep. Yeah, it's crazy. Robert says, the more I listen to hear about these clowns, the more disgusted I get that anyone fears or worships them. Yeah, I hear you. If you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button, guys, and then we'll go on to the next story. All right. Let's go ahead and pull up that comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then we'll move on. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. You want to speak of plainclothes police? Peep the story of Sean Bell in NYC 2006. Him and a few friends were leaving a strip club in Queens as part of his bachelor party. Members of the NYPD fired 50 shots in total, with fewer than half hitting their intended targets. Bell was struck in the neck and arm and pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. His friend, Joe Guzman, was left in critical condition. After being hit 11 times, another friend, Trent Benfield, arrived in stable condition. Both were shackled to their beds by police, drawing outcry from activists. None of the 3 men had a weapon, despite police reporting that they heard one of the 3 men mention a gun. Police were staking out the strip club due to allegations of drug dealing and prostitution. An undercover officer called out to the other officers staking out the place, telling them to get ready for a possible encounter. The officer thought one of the men mentioned a gun. The police commissioner, Ray Kelly, said that Bell's car went into reverse when an officer approached the front of the car. The car then hit a police minivan and drove onto the sidewalk when the shooting commenced. All the officers involved in the shooting were acquitted. Interesting. One second. Thank you for this as well. Now, Sab, why do I mention that article out of Amsterdam News? The survivors said they thought because police were plainclothes, they thought it was a carjacking. So they hit the gas and went full blast. Now, you, Chris Rock, you're about to get thrown under the bus, bruh. Oh my God. OMG Sab, I remember when Tucker mentioned traveling with Clinton to Africa. Tucker have always talked about his friendship with Bill and Bill coaxing him into doing something he didn't want to do. I forgot what it was. It was on Netflix, Tucker stand-up. Sabs, I've said Tucker meaning rock and vice versa. I'm guilty myself. Just like I've said Brooke Burns and meant Burke at times. Sometimes it's understandable. That's true. That's true. Sometimes it can be understandable. Speaking of being understandable, we're going into this story about RFK Jr. and his visit in New Hampshire. This happened this morning. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it there, but I did decide I would talk about it tonight. Now, I wasn't able to make it there, but Pasta from the Convo Couch actually was able to attend the event, and he did get the opportunity to ask RFK Jr. 2 questions that I think you will want to hear the answers to. There's a lot to be said. People are already cringing on Twitter because he posted it on Twitter first. But first, I want to get started with the beginning of RFK Jr.'s speech that he actually has at the New Hampshire Senate House. So this is a part of a series that they do where they invite presidential candidates to come speak at the Senate in New Hampshire. So let's get started with that.
Introduction of guests, and it's my pleasure to continue the tradition that we've adopted over the last several months to welcome to our state first in the nation candidates. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to recognize Robert Kennedy Jr.
Thank you, Speaker Packard. And I want to also send greetings to Lou Alessandro, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to the New Hampshire State Senate. My family has a long history and deep history in this state, going back to my great-grandparents, Honey Fitz and Patrick Kennedy. My grandfather, Joseph Kennedy, spent his summer camps at Lake Wine Oak up in Wolfsboro. I grew up camping and hiking every summer and every winter in New Hampshire, hiking the presidential range. I talked with Speaker Packard and saw his beautiful photographs of some of those peaks. I told him that I'd spend many nights on Mount Washington in the huts in the middle of the winter skiing Tuckerman's Ravine. I hiked in the summer times the presidentials, but also Osceola, Tri-Pyramid, Mount Carrigan, Mount Flume, and many, many others. My brothers cut trails for their summer job at Waterville Valley, and I'm very proud that Tommy Corcoran named the steepest slope at Waterville after my father, who loved to ski there as well.
I just want to jump in here just to explain what he's saying, because some of you that don't hike and don't live in New England are probably like, what the hell is he talking about? So like in New England, hiking is like a big deal here. I had to find that out myself when I moved here like 11 years ago. But it's a popular thing to do. There is Mount Washington, which is in New Hampshire. There's Tuckerman's Ravine. I've hiked at Tuckerman's Ravine. Like my husband is really into this kind of thing. So he got me into it. But it's a big deal here. So it's not uncommon for people to, especially during this time of the year, to go hiking. So he's talking about all the different hiking trips that he had and his family has had.
I'm here because I am going to participate in this primary in this state. I oppose the DNC's decision to evict New Hampshire from the first in nation status, which is so important, I think, to our country. It is more than a tradition. New Hampshire plays a critical role in vetting candidates for the rest of the country.
So that piece is important when he says he plans to participate in the primary. Let's remember that the Democratic Party, they changed the primary state order. So instead of New Hampshire, the order was like Iowa, New Hampshire. Now South Carolina is actually going to be the first state. So basically what is happening is that New Hampshire didn't like that too much, and they're deciding to go ahead with things the way that they usually did it anyway. So what that means is that if RFK Jr., he's telling you that he is still going to participate in that New Hampshire primary, I assume Marianne Williamson will probably do the same. Joe Biden, on the other hand, would not be able to do it at the same, because the party voted against it, right? So it seems like they're willing to take, if there is a penalty, it seems like New Hampshire is willing to pay the fine and to take the penalty and keep their spot. So they're still planning to run things as normal, and so is Iowa. So I just wanted to explain that for those who are not aware. That's why he says, I plan on participating in this primary in New Hampshire.
Other parts of the United States, the states are content with having politicians come in with money that they've gotten from billionaires and carpet bombing the state from 30,000 feet with advertising, or staging occasionally rallies that are heavily orchestrated, where the crowds are heavily screened and they're kind of a kabuki theater of democracy. But here, politicians get real democracy. They encounter people, they have to go to the hair salons, the barber shops, the diners, the gas stations. They have to talk to the 80-year-old lady who reads the Financial Times and the Economist every week and ask them a question and a follow-up question and another follow-up question that they will never get from CNN. They will never get it from the New York Times even. And it's retail politics. And they are vetting our candidates the same way that they would vet a city council candidate or a local mayor. And they do it for the rest of the country. And the other thing that's very important about New Hampshire is that 42% of the people in this state are registered independents. It's the highest of any state. And the importance of that right now is that those are people who are critical thinkers, they're independent thinkers, and they're able to step outside of that fixed, paralyzing iceberg of partisanship.
Pause right there for a second. Let's talk about the independent registered voters in New Hampshire. So when I tell you that politically, New Hampshire can be a mixed bag, this is very much true. If you go to some of the coastal cities in New Hampshire, it tends to be a little bit more progressive. So like if you go to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, you'll see this more like an artist community. It's similar in other states as well. Like there's always like that coastal town or coastal city where a lot of artists and stuff gather. But if you go to some of the more rural parts of New Hampshire, you may get some voters that may be a little bit more conservative. But independents kind of travel throughout the state. And I want to mention something as well that I think often is not talked about in reference to New Hampshire voters, something that has changed within the past couple of years. There has actually been an influx of Massachusetts residents that have moved to New Hampshire. And the reason for that is because this state is expensive. I wish I had something more deep to tell you, but that's the answer. This state is expensive. So I've had friends that have done this as well. When it was time for them to buy a house, they moved to New Hampshire because it was cheaper for them to buy a house in New Hampshire than in Massachusetts. So what that means is that you do have some of the more progressive-minded voters that had roots in Massachusetts that have relocated to that southern part of New Hampshire so they can still commute to work here in Massachusetts. I know it's crazy, but people do it. They've settled there in New Hampshire, and that can change the politics of the state. So when I tell you that New Hampshire is more of a mixed bag, it is. You have some of the people in the state that have like that progressive kind of minded, mentality. Then you have some people who are Republicans, and you also have people who are, like the vote blue, no matter who, Democrats, but it's a mixed bag. And there are also a large number of registered independent voters in New Hampshire. So I think that we need to pay attention to that in reference to what this could look like for the rest of the country. But the demographics, the voting demographics can change at any time. All it takes is for people to start to relocate, for things to start to shift. There was a time when New Hampshire typically voted like red, right? Republican, but that has changed and has shifted more to blue. But Yeah, you have to understand what's been happening. Like, people have been moving around. So that's something to pay attention to. That's also the reason why I believe North Carolina went for Obama in '08, because there also have been, especially during that time, there was an influx of people from the North that were a little bit more liberal minded moving to North Carolina, like a Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill triangle area. And that has had an influence on the politics in the state. Continues by this way. Let's go on.
That has our country at each other's throats. Are able to look at candidates without the ideology blocking their vision, and really judge the candidates on what they say and be open to new ideas that are not locked in that ideological razor grip. Right now, it's particularly important at New Hampshire that we have a real democracy and a democratic election in New Hampshire. There's so many Americans who believe that the system now is rigged. The economic system, but also the political system, that the elections are fixed.
He's talking about me. I'm one of those people. That's me. I'm sorry. He says they believe it, but it's true. Right? So this is RFK Jr. letting you know he knows. Like, he knows it's fixed. I've showed you other things about this as well, but it's kind of funny to me. He said there are so many Americans that believe it's fixed. When I first watched this video, and I was like, me.
New Hampshire has the gold standard for political elections. People don't question the results. And we ought to be, the Democratic Party particularly, ought to be making this election a template for democracy to our country and to the rest of the world, and say we're going to have a real democracy where candidates meet human beings, are questioned by them, have town halls, and deal with all of the difficulties of retail politics. And we need to show the American people that is particularly important at this time for another reason. And I believe that the motto of the granite state, live free and die, is not just a motto. The many people in New Hampshire take that personally. They have a fierce pride in liberty. Over 500 New Hampshire men died in the American Revolution to give us our freedoms, to give us our rights, along with 25,000 elsewhere in our country. And today, those rights are under attack like never before in our history. In the last 3 years, there's been an all-out assault on the Bill of Rights. We now have, for the first time, the government participating in censorship of political dissent, of people who are criticizing federal policies. We saw churches closed. We saw freedom of worship threatened. Every church in this country was closed for a year without any scientific citation, without any democratic process, no notice and comment, public hearings. All of that was just abolished. And bureaucrats just decided to close all the churches. And they went after freedom of assembly. They shut down. They said, we have to social distance. We have to lock ourselves in our house. They went after the Fifth Amendment rights to property rights. They closed down 3.3 million businesses in this country with no due process, no just compensation.
But not in New Hampshire. And why is it important that he gives that speech in New Hampshire? Because New Hampshire didn't do that. I know I have friends that live there. And when we were locked down here in Massachusetts, going to New Hampshire at that point in time felt like going to another country. Like just being honest. But it's important that he mentions that there, because in a way he's letting them know in New Hampshire that they did it the right way. So people have to understand that. That's why it's important that he mentions that there. They really do take the motto, live free or die, seriously. I'm not kidding.
And went after the Fourth Amendment guarantees against warrantless searches and seizures with all this intrusive government track and trace surveillance, and Americans had to show their medical records before leaving their homes or entering a public building. And they abolished jury trials for whole classes of defendants. So for the people in the pharmaceutical industry or the medical cartel.
Got to pause there because of YouTube censorship. Sorry. I'll just move forward a little bit here. Just past that part. Sorry, guys. Just a little bit past it.
Suspend the Constitution no matter what is more important than anything. And today, now, we have all these new surveillance technologies. We have digital currencies, AI technology, which is frightening. GPS technologies, 400,000 low-level satellites that are going to look at every square inch of the Earth every day. It has been the ambition of every totalitarian regime in history to control every aspect of human behavior. They've never been able to do it, but they can do it now. And it's so important that we counter that threat by strengthening and fortifying our democratic institutions, not weakening them. And that begins with the Bill of Rights, and it includes the New Hampshire primary. And I want to tell you, I'm going to be in this state fighting to win every vote I can in New Hampshire, Republican, Democratic, and Independent. And when I'm elected president and I'm head of the Democratic Party, I'm going to pour concrete on the notion that New Hampshire is first in the nation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was his speech there in New Hampshire. Now, I think he's 100% right about the surveillance state. Yes, it is a problem. It's a big issue. I think it's great that he calls out like the government agencies. I've been vocal about this before. Like, I agree with him on those issues. And also, I agree with him on another issue that was raised by Pasta from the Convo Couch. So again, Pasta was able to be there in person. I'm mad he came through New England and not call me. How you come through New England, not call me? Just kidding. Anywho, this question that Pasta did ask about Cuba. So shout out to Pasta for getting this question out. Very important question.
Mr. Kennedy, recently on an interview, you said that your uncle has more streets named after him in Latin America than any other president that's held office. What is your position on Cuba? Are you willing to get rid of the blockade on day one?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy, recently on an interview, you said that your uncle has more streets named after him in Latin America than any other president that's held office. What is your position on Cuba? Are you willing to get rid of the blockade on day one?
Yes.
That's an important question. So he's willing to get rid of the blockade on Cuba on day one. So shout out to Pasta for asking that question. I'm not sure if he's had a chance to ask Marianne about that question or not, but I thought that was, I think most of us would want to hear that, right? I'm pretty sure people in Cuba would be happy to hear that as well. Yeah, Steve, you're right. I think that's a great answer. But brace yourselves, because Pasta also asked him another question in reference to Israel and Palestine. And this answer, not so great. Not so great. Listen to this.
Mr. Kennedy, a lot of people are confused about the tweet storm. I call it the tweet heard around the world. A couple of tweets were put up in support of Roger Waters and then taken down. Do you want to give us a little explanation of why they were taken down and also your stance on Israel and Palestine?
Okay, for those who are not aware, Roger Waters is coming under fire. He was being like investigated. Like the German police were after him because of a performance that he did at his concerts, which he's done for years. And they said that it was anti-Semitic. Actually, he was speaking out against fascism. This is in reference to The Wall. So if you've seen The Wall and if you listen to The Wall, you already know this. You know what this is all about, right? Okay. Anywho, RFK Jr. actually issued a tweet supporting Roger Waters, you know, because they're trying to silence Roger Waters. They've been trying to do this for quite some time. And he deleted that tweet. Now, I talked about this recently the other day on Rising with Bree and Robbie. I also talked about it on this channel the other day as well. But there were questions After the appearance on Rising, some people reached out to me and said, well, Sabrina, how do you know how he really feels about the Israel thing? And how do you know it wasn't a mistake? It wasn't. And here's the answer. Here's how you know it wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, I tweeted that. I made the tweet applauding Roger Waters' courage in opposing the COVID mandates and the Ukraine war. I was unaware of his position on Israel. And when I learned that, I immediately took it down. My position of Israel is that I support Israel. My family has a long relationship with Israel. I support its right to exist and its right to protect its security.
And the Palestinians?
Before we get to the Palestinians, let's hear that one more time for people who still have questions, because a couple of you contacted me. Like, Sabby, how do you know? Are you sure? You don't know for sure that he really feels that way? Sabby, you don't know.
COVID mandates and the Ukraine war. I was unaware of his position on Israel. And when I learned that, I immediately took it down. My position of Israel is that I support Israel. My family has a long relationship with Israel.
His position is he supports Israel, and his family has a long relationship with Israel. For the people who claim to still not be sure what he was talking about, there you go. There you go. Let's let him continue. Just for the people in the back.
The position of Israel is that I support Israel. My family has a long relationship with Israel. I support its right to exist and its right to protect its security.
This piece, when people say that they support its right to exist, by the way, we're talking about the state of Israel, we're not talking about people. It's always interesting because Roger Meadows brings this up every time. He's like, what about the right for Palestine to exist? So Roger Meadows said this the other day. What about the right for Palestine to?
And the Palestinians?
And a humane outcome and a recognition ultimately of the aspirations of the Palestinian people is important for everybody.
Thank you.
Aspirations. When it comes to the Palestinian people, it's just about the aspirations. Now, here's a question. Look at this. Watch this. So here's Dennis Kucinich. Dennis Kucinich is the campaign manager. I don't know what to say. He's just standing. He's not saying anything. I don't know, man. I don't know. And I'm going to show you some of the comments because it's a hot mess.
The Palestinian people is important for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you make of it?
Now let's see some of the comments. So again, shout out to Pasta for getting that question in there because it's not easier. Oz has a great comment and we're going to show this. He goes, here, let me give you a hand, or better yet, Claire Daly will help you fix your response to questions like the one that you were just asked. So let's go ahead and bring in Claire Daly here.
Over 5 days earlier this month, Israel attacked and bombed Gaza 323 times. 10 civilians were killed, 1,100 people displaced. More than 150,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed or injured in Gaza and the West Bank since 2008. 33,000 of those were children. The EU stands by and watches this happen and calls Israel our friend. We construct houses and schools in the West Bank. The Israelis come and destroy them. We cannot consider ourselves a union of values and continue to call Israel our friend. We need to have this conversation, but in light of the time constraints that we are now already under, and the positive remarks by some of the other groups that they will facilitate a full and necessary debate on this in June, I'll withdraw it on that basis.
So Claire is based as usual, but Oz, thank you so much for sharing that. I'll show you some of the other responses Oh, there's my response. I told Pasta, I said, couldn't get up there today because of work, but thanks for covering this. Next time you come to New England, hit me up. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Oh my God. Some of the yikes. And here's Roger Meadows. Time to start asking politicians, does Palestine have a right to exist? Like thank you for asking him, Pasta. If you ever bump into Marianne Williamson, please ask her about her stance on Israel and Palestine as well. We asked her about that as well. And here comes neoliberal tears. It's an even worse answer than I expected. Yeah, oh man. Some people are saying he gave a fair and honest answer. It makes me support him even more. Marianne gave that same honest answer herself. Like, she gave an honest answer as well about her opinion about what should happen in reference to Israel and Palestine. So it's just, yo, man, I'm going to tell you guys, I already see the standing happen. I have noticed this is already happening. Here's Elizabeth Ferrari says, this is just awful. How Dennis can co-sign it, I don't know. It is not easy to criticize RFK Jr. An earliest political memory is seeing his dad at the Cow Palace in San Francisco as JFK's surrogate. The day Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, we walked 2 precincts in San Jose June heat. I was 12. My mom been sent to the Chicano hoods because we spoke Spanish. Do better than this, Robert. We can all do better than this. So I hope that answers the question for some of you who reached out to me and you're like, how do you know, Sabby? How do you know? Shout out to Rome. I see Rome's in the chat and says, Mofo tried to both sides, Israel and Palestine. I don't know, man. Maybe I need to have Oz says horrible answer, very telling. Maybe I need to do like a panel on this or something. I don't know, but so because your family has a long-standing relationship with it, you have to continue what the family did. So this is important because new polls, 2024 National Democratic Primary, Joe Biden's at 59%, RFK Jr.'s at 19%, Marianne Williamson's at 11%. However, when they ask without Biden, RFK Jr. is at 44%, and Marianne Williamson is at 28%. So I wanted to show you guys this. If Joe Biden was not in the race, that is a big difference. And then I want to show you what James Vanderbeek has said in reference to this is a doozy. James Vanderbeek, for the young peeps in the chat, there was a show I used to watch when I was growing up called Dawson's Creek. So to me, he will always be Dawson. He was Dawson on the show. I don't know him as anything else. Like, I really don't. I don't even know. I've never seen him in any other movies or, oh no, he was in Varsity Blues, that movie, but he was still Dawson at that point. So I just only know him as Dawson. So I'm gonna call him Dawson. Anywho, we already told you that the DNC, the Democratic Party, has also decided that there will be no primary debates, right? Even though people are polling the way that they're polling. Well, Dawson had something to say about that. Let's bring him in.
Are you kidding me? There's no debate. There's no debate over an 80-year-old man who, if he lives, will be the oldest sitting president in the history of the country. And if he doesn't live, has a vice president whose approval rating is worse than his. This guy is obviously declining mental faculties. You're putting him up in front of a podium with flashcards telling him who to call on and what the questions are going to be. You're telling us there's no debate? What about the will of the people? And let's just not even the will of the people. What about the will of the people who voted for the guy last time? Because of those people, 72% think there ought to be a debate. of the people who voted for Biden last election. 72% want a debate. So the DNC is openly ignoring, bypassing the will of the people. Why? But this was a democracy of the people, by the people, for the people. If we don't have a debate, this is not a democracy by the people. It's a democracy by them. For who? Big banks, big business, big tech, big pharma, big government, big whatever. I mean, what the hell? How is this a democracy? And how is anybody in the DNC right today going to post about thanking our troops and thanking the families who have made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our democracy and our way of freedom? Now, listen, I am grateful for them, but any member of the DNC who's going to think about posting that today, stop, think, and do your fucking job before you start posting about how grateful you are. There are people out there who are willing to die to preserve democracy, because you are not preserving democracy right now. You're shoehorning your pick and forcing it on the rest of us. And don't tell me that the other candidates aren't serious, because one of them is polling at 7%. The other one is at 19%. That is a quarter of the vote who already thinks there's at the very least some debate.
So that was Dawson's opinion. So he's not feeling it. I don't want to wait. That was the song from Dawson's Creek. I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. I want to know right now, what will it be? I forget the lady, the musician who sings the song. I forget her name, but I know that was also the same woman that sang that song, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Where have all the cowboys gone? If you guys know in the chat, let me know. It's really interesting. Like, my parents were really annoyed by that song. But anywho, yeah, they don't want there to be any primary debates, which is crazy considering the fact that Joe Biden can barely stand. I don't know if you've seen this. Shout out to Comrade CJ over at RBN. Breaking: the guy falling on the stage at the U.S. Air Force Academy graduation is the weekend at Bernie's presidential candidate that's supposed to beat Donald Trump in 2024. Who on earth believes that Trump is going to have a field day with Dementia Joe? I don't know if you've seen it, but hold on. It's just beyond embarrassing at this point. And this is who they're trying to drag over the finish line. Who did he trip over? Was anyone there? Anyone? No? Bueller? I didn't see anyone there. Let's see. Let me make sure I didn't miss. No. No one. For a second, I thought maybe let's back it up. Let's do slow-mo. One step. Let me see you 1, 2 step. Rock it. Everybody go on the floor. Get it on. Let me see your 1, 2 step. Let me see your 1, 2 step. Rock it. Everybody get on the floor. Let me stop. I'm sorry. Okay, so no. And that's where he goes down right there. JB says a walker would be more protection than Secret Service at this point. And they don't want to have debates. Hi, Demi Dixon. Was that too soon? Maybe I shouldn't joke about that. But I just didn't understand. Like, what was the fall over? I don't know. We are going to do call in tonight. I know it's been a minute, so we are going to do that. I'm excited and pumped, and we'll talk about this. I want to hear your opinions about the shows we've discussed tonight or stories we discussed tonight. But I don't know, man. You got Joe Biden who can't stand. And then you have two people primary challenging Joe Biden that they're like backing the state of Israel. Palestinian people are always mentioned after the fact. It's always the state of Israel first and the Palestinians are mentioned last. And I've been noticing that for quite a while. Aye. Very crazy, very crazy. I'm going to take a quick break. Eric, I think we have a couple more comments that need shout out. Paula Cole. Thank you, Rick. It's Paula Cole. Where have all the cowboys gone? I'm gonna get that song stuck in your head, guys. Eric, I think we got a couple more comments.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a quick break and I'll be back. We'll do
a few people in the stream got it. A few people in the stream, they got it. All right. How's everybody doing on a Thursday night? This is where we give Sabby a little break before we jump into call-in. My camera's a little dark, but we'll live with it. All right. So we're going to be kicking over to call-in. Let me see if I can get that call-in link into the chat, and Sabrina will be posting it to the as a pin chat pretty soon here. You can do call-in on your browser by kicking through that link, or you can install call-in on your smartphone, going that way, search up Sabby Sabs, and we can hear what you think. Let's see what we got for some stacked up chats while we're waiting for Sabrina to come back here. Rhino said, sorry, Chris Rock. Sorry, Chris Tucker. I no longer want anything to do with either of your comedy specials. In this chat from DJ Bonzi, glad Pasta got the question about Roger Waters, but surprised he didn't bring up CIA connections to RFK's campaign. Yeah, I mean, the really good question there was about the Roger Waters in Israel, and it was quite telling, that answer there. W. Dean said you have to have a party affiliation in order to vote in the New Hampshire primaries. Independents will need to declare a party in order to vote in a primary. Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's kind of part of the problem of running, in the Democratic Party, is that then you end up caught up in all these kind of issues. If he was running as an independent and making ballot access part of the campaign and really doing a strong run that way, it would be a very different campaign. This whole idea that the Democratic Republican political parties in their primaries play this huge role in our politics is a huge part of the problem. I mean, we have these party primaries, using the same voting machines and the same facilities as the regular elections. And, I think people need to step back and just think about, things like that. I mean, party political primaries shouldn't even be a thing. I mean, the parties should be able to go off and do their own caucuses or primaries, whatever they want, and then we have a single election. We do ranked choice voting. We put everybody on the ballot, and we have an election. That's what democracy looks like. And these party primaries is it isn't real democracy. And this whole idea of the rigged elections, and yeah, I mean, there are issues with elections, but I mean, I feel like these parties, the uniparty, they don't have to rig the voting and the tallies and whatnot. They have the system rigged already. And the way you rig a system is you only let candidates get on the ballot and be talked about that you want elected. And so, the system's pre-rigged, and yeah, I think the system should be more transparent and should be auditable and verified. But I mean, it's like, that's not where the rigging is. You know, the rigging happens, you know, well before election day. In this chat from Baby Ethernet, oops, it's giving duopoly. RFK sounds like a moderate Democrat when it comes to Israel. Yep, true that. And this super chat, thanks for the super chat, JRCII. At least he's someone open to changing his mind, which is more than you can say for most politicians with bad positions. Well, I mean, if RFK is going to change his mind in Israel, you better start doing it quick, because it doesn't sound like it's really happening. And Red Six said, no, that's Jonathan Moxon from Varsity Blues. And thanks for the super sticker, Fizzy Pop Slippers. Thanks for the super chat, Margan Vargas. Apartheid Israel actions only fuel more violence. True that. And let's see, we got one more here. Thanks for the super chat, Renaming in Progress. I like that name. Aaron Stoner, final verdict, case solved. Not sure what that is. I think we need more details, but thanks for that super chat. And I know we got at least one queued up here on the rock fins. Let's see what our man Roger has to say. Make sure I can see what I need to see here. All right. He said, Roger Meadows, thanks for the tipped comment on Rockfin. He said the importance of independence is that those are people who are critical thinkers. They are independent thinkers, and they're able to step outside that fixed, paralyzing iceberg of partisanship. Robert, what does that say about you running inside the D party or any party? Talk about can't see the forest for the trees. And thanks for that on the rock fins, Roger. And we got another, swap that around. We got another super chat came in here from DC. If you haven't seen The Wall, Chanda Master of Trailer Park Pundit Beauty and the Boomer is live streaming now on the Roar Media Rockfin channel. Thanks for that, DC.
Oh.
All right, let me get these back on so I can hear you. All right, let's get this back over. All right, and now we'll be going over to the rock fans. Yeah.
All right, we're going to head on over to Call In. We are on episode 109, RFK Jr., Israel/Palestine controversy. Pasta, host of the Convo Couch, was able to ask RFK Jr. about intentions of deleting his tweet of support for Roger Waters. How do you feel about his response to Pasta in reference to Israel and Palestine? And just to let you guys know, Rumble has acquired Call In. We're still there for now. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. We're waiting, I guess, to hear whatever Rumble decides. So hopefully Rumble keeps things the same, but I don't know. It could be they could come up with this thing and say like only people that have Rumble, that are on Rumble and have Rumble shows can also be on Call In. I mean, if that's the case, I should be fine because I am on Rumble as well. But we'll see what happens. So I don't know, but let's go ahead and head on over there. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. So if you have the app, you know how to do this. If you don't have the app, you can still access a Call In just by clicking on the link on your laptop, and you can call in from your laptop as well. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And yeah. Where have all the cowboys gone? Sorry. That song always got stuck in my head. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and head on over to Call In. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.